Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Founders Shed. My name is Hamlyn. I'm here with Shane, and welcome to episode 3.
Episode 3 already. It's flying by.
It is. It's been a couple of weeks since our last episode, but yeah, this week we're talking all about finding your why, which has been something that Shane and I have had to experience quite a lot in our careers, and also over the last few weeks. It's something that I've been meditating on quite a lot. I say meditating, I don't mean actually like sitting meditating, but just like thinking about it a lot in the shower.
It's a really great thing to think about, though, isn't it? Like I only came across this concept over the last kind of couple of years, right? Like over maybe 3 years ago, started appearing kind of in my mind and in front of me all the time. And I was introduced to the book Start with Why, Simon Sinek. A fantastic read, and that's now shaping probably everything that I do in my life in some way, shape, or form, whether it's business or whether it's personal. I always now start with why rather than what.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do too. I mean, I use it all the time in my work with clients when I'm helping them with their branding and their business and marketing stuff. I'm always encouraging them to think about the reason why they're doing what they're doing. For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, this is based on a concept made famous by a guy called Simon Sinek, who is, how would you describe him, Shane? He's like kind of like a business celebrity, isn't he?
Yeah, he's really inspiring to anybody who's interested in kind of business and leadership. I would say it's not necessarily just business. I know a lot of teachers who are super interested in his teachings and kind of how he does his kind of talks and all the rest of it. So yeah, business and leadership.
Yeah, business and leadership. He's very sort of his approach is very like down to earth, very people driven. You talked about leadership. I think Start with Why was his first ever book. There's an amazing TED Talk, which I would encourage all of you to watch. Even if you've already seen it or already familiar, just go and watch it again and refresh yourselves, because it really is brilliant. We'll put a link in the description as well, so you can find that. But the concept of Start with Why is, Simon Sinek explains that most businesses are very good at telling you what they do, and some can even tell you how they do that thing differently to other people. But very, very few businesses can actually tell you why they do what they do. And what he then starts doing is he starts applying this thinking to modern day examples. And he kind of demonstrates that the businesses that are doing really well, that have the strongest sort of following, is because they've got a really solid why at the core. And because they have that, it means that people just naturally gravitate towards them because they understand fundamentally what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so there's a really great example of this, right? Where, and I think it's worth just touching on this quickly. The fantastic example, which everybody who's listening to this will probably understand, is Apple, right? And they are fantastic, and people often wonder why Apple can diversify so much within their product ranges but still be successful in all of those areas. It's because of their why. And we were talking about this just before we started this podcast, actually, Hamlin. But I think it's a fantastic one. So maybe you want to just share that quickly, because I know you're quite familiar with this.
Yeah, so this is the example I always use when I'm talking to clients or anyone that wants help with this. I always use this as an example. So when Apple was selling computers in the 80s, for example, when they were first getting big as a company, if you'd asked any other computer business like what they do or why they should buy from you, they would probably tell you something like, we make great computers. And you would expect, if Apple were like another company, they would probably say something on the lines of, we make beautifully designed computers. But actually, Apple's why is more meaningful than that. It's all about doing things differently, being on the cutting edge. And because that's their why, it means that can then inform everything else. That their why can inform what they do and how they do it, which means that the products they make can change. If their why was about making computers, they'd only ever be able to make computers. But because their why is about doing things differently, it means that they could create the Macintosh, which was a revolutionary computer. They could change the music industry in the 2000s with the iPod and iTunes. They can create the iPhone in 2007, wearables, iPads, revolutionize personal computing. And that's what the future looks like for them. Apple could make a car. I think there's even rumors that they might enter into that.
There's rumors about them doing that, and they've also got banking on the agenda as well.
Apple Card. So it just means that it's so open in front of them. The only thing is they have to, as long as they're doing it in line with their why, they can do anything. But those things match, to be on the cutting edge, to be doing things differently. It means that they have the ability to always be there. I mean, they launched their streaming service, Apple TV Plus, around the same time as Disney Plus, maybe just before. I think this was last night. I was sitting on my TV, like flicking between the channels, and I was thinking, this is probably like the last opportunity to really get on that boat of like big streaming services, and Apple and Disney have kind of like just jumped on at the end. But that's the thing. I think having a why that's really clear allows you to have this awareness of all these other arenas that you can go down. And it's like a compass, isn't it? It can kind of just help guide you to make those decisions.
Yeah, and it's really interesting as well, because nobody, like, if like when we talk about Apple turning to financial services, right? You're like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? They've got Apple Pay and all the rest of it. It all ties in. If I turned around to you and said Dallas starting their own bank, you'd laugh. Right?
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. And there's a similar example when Dow tried to enter the MP3 market, right? So Apple had done it, and nobody questioned it. Everyone started buying Apple iPods, and they were really, really successful. Dow tried to do the same thing, and they just flopped. It didn't work.
Yeah,
because people associated Dow with computers rather than their way of doing things differently, like Apple had.
Yeah, and there's so many things about Apple that are like really fascinating to study from not just like a marketing and branding point of view in the way they present themselves, but just in general, like their culture of innovation. Like they invented they have their own patented design for a pizza box. It's like a round box that the engineers designed to keep the pizza perfectly warm, because they have pizza in their cafeteria. So they designed like a patented box.
It's an expensive box to have, but
yeah, it's like the most Apple thing ever. But yeah, it's a really fascinating company to study, and I think that they're a great example of the start with why, and why that's so important to do that.
So let's put this back to the golden circle then, right? Which is one of the key learnings, key takeaways for me from that book, The Start With Why. And I think it's a really great visual representation, which we can put up on the screen for those who are watching. But for those who are just listening, this is like a target, right? So in the middle, your very smallest target point is the why. So that's what you start with. And then you build your layers outside of that, which is the how and then the what. Now, most traditional companies would start with the what. What are we going to do? Then they work out how they're going to do it. Whereas what we're saying and what the book teaches is you start with why. Why are you actually going to do this?
Yeah. So if you imagine those three sort of concentric circles, and when I've done this exercise in the past, what you realize is people are very used to starting on the outside with the what. They can tell you what it is that they do. Like, we sell computers, or we sell this, or whatever it is. And then you can sometimes start to identify what's on that inner ring, which is the how, which might be how you do things differently to a competitor. But it's very much focused on like the present, on like what you're doing right now. We're selling pastries, but it's different because we've got loads of lovely vegan stuff and blah, 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 and we do this pastry that this person doesn't do. Yes, that all makes sense, but like, why are you doing that? And it's a much harder question to answer. And I think that's why Simon Sinek kind of realized this and made it the focal point, because if you're able to answer that question, like really dig deep and answer that question, because it's not a shallow answer you can give. And the other thing is that when you are finding your why, especially as a business, the why can't be money. The why you do things can't be to make money, because, and Simon Sinek also has a brilliant way of explaining this, which is that money is not a goal, it's an outcome. So it's something that you achieve through following that why. And he also has another good anecdote, which is that think of money like fuel. A car needs fuel to get from A to B, but the purpose of having a car isn't to get fuel. The fuel is the thing that allows you to go from A to B. So, and when you start thinking of it like that, you actually realize that that why has to be something quite emotional. It has to be something very, it has to be like a mission, something that can't just be achieved. It can't just be, we want to sell this many units, because once you achieve that, you're hollow again, you have no why. So it has to be something that can't really be achieved. Like if you go back to the example of Apple, the think different and be on the cutting edge is a why that keeps moving as the goalposts move. It's something that always is relevant. And the same can be said, your why might be about helping people, helping a community. It might be about solving a problem, solving world's biggest problems, something like that.
And it's great to see now that organizations and companies are actually seeing this, and we'll get onto how this affected us in just a second. But as a lot of you know, my day job is with Nationwide Building Society, and we've actually taken this concept as well recently. So rather than having kind of big departments about, okay, this is our cards, this is payments, this is something, we're now moving to mission-led kind of development. So it's all about, like, what does this do for the members? Like, why are we doing this? It's not about kind of how do we make the most money. It's about why are we doing this? And it's great to see that in Nationwide, because this is a big, massive organization here in the UK that is understanding their why, and their why is to serve their members. It's not to make money. And of course, we are a building society rather than a bank. So it's slightly different. We don't have shareholders and all the rest of it. The members are essentially the shareholders. So it's different, but it's all driven around those members. And we're now encouraged to kind of challenge on things that we don't see as beneficial to the members. And that's something that I'm quite passionate about, in terms of when new items of work come into the squad where I work, I'm open to challenging those and saying, well, actually, why are we doing this? Is this cost effective? What's the outcome for the member? It's not about, let's just go and do this because that's what we're told to do anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
So shall we pull this over to how this has affected us? Because this has changed us dramatically, right? Like when we started VANHEROES, for example, we were all excited about being this big, massive Silicon Valley startup, essentially, right? Where we were going to make millions and millions. And over the course of this kind of learnings of finding our why, we changed that quite dramatically. In the VANHEROES why, when we started thinking about this a bit more, it changed our brand, it changed what we were doing. It wasn't just about being this big startup that made millions of pounds. It was actually, we're here to serve a community. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect communities. And so it's affected us quite dramatically, both in business and personal lives as well.
Yeah. I mean, what was can you remember what your sort of like first reaction was when you discovered that start with why concept? Because I think most people, because it's such an actionable concept, it's something that you can, once you understand it, you can instantly take it away and start applying it to things. And whether that's applying it to businesses that you know, or the business you work for, or, I think it can extend to other things outside of businesses, which we'll come on to in a minute. But yeah, I think everyone's first reaction is like, well, what is the why of the company I work for, or the company I'm building? And I think that's kind of was our initial reaction too, wasn't it? We were working on VANHEROES at the time, working evenings and weekends outside of our day jobs. And I think the first time we tried really using this was when we rebranded VANHEROES. So in the early days, VANHEROES had a different name. It was called Tote, and we talked about rebranding it and changing the name. And there'd also been a bit of a thing where there was another company that had the Tote name, but they were a completely different company. And we were put in touch with he was a really great sort of like marketing guy who worked for the other business, and we were talking to him about like what our options were. And then we kind of realized actually maybe this is a great opportunity to like refocus what the company is about. And if that means changing the name, we'll just change the name. But we'll use this Start With Why framework to try and inform that decision. And I remember that session really well. We were sat in the workshed in Swindon on that whiteboard, and we had the golden circle drawn up, and we were, spitballing like names and ideas, and just trying to really think about like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the reason? And understanding that it can't just be, well, what are we about? We can tell you what we do. We connect people with vans, but why are we doing it? And I think it kept coming back to this helping communities and connecting people.
Yeah, definitely. It was a great session. That I really enjoyed that, and that really helped me understand the concept as well of finding your why and start with why. And that's ultimately what drew us to the name VANHEROES, right? Like it wasn't just about a name. It was, these are heroes. These are people that are coming to your need. It was about connecting those communities of people who needed people with vans and people with vans who needed customers. It was bringing those guys together.
Yeah, I think when you have your why so clear like that, it suddenly becomes like the spirit level for every idea you have. So when you have it come up with a name like VANHEROES, which at the time seemed like really obvious, like almost too obvious. Like we were already referring to the drivers as heroes, even though we weren't called VANHEROES. But when we thought, well, they drive vans and we call them heroes, and it just felt like this is really obvious. Why have we not thought about this before? And then when we sort of lined it up with our why, we were like, that name kind of radiates what we're all about. Like it feels really approachable, it feels really friendly, it feels really like proactive and wanting to help. And that is exactly what we were all about. So and then I guess we found that why helped us later on with loads of other things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on that journey with VANHEROES, we essentially found our why as well, which wasn't, it was still about helping people, helping communities, and all the rest of it. So our why as a partnership kind of evolved as well, and it drew us to this concept of entrepreneurship and helping people who work in large corporations understand startup values, and vice versa, people in startups getting the benefits of the big corporations. So it naturally drew us across, right?
Yeah, and let's just talk about that quickly. So our why at VANHEROES was about helping communities and connecting people. And then once we kind of realized that, we realized that the scope of that was bigger than just connecting everyday people with local van drivers. We realized there was bigger scope. There was scope to work with businesses, scope to work with local companies, and that's where the opportunity with Nationwide actually came up, to place employees from Nationwide in VANHEROES to kind of have this like learn by doing environment. So Shane, you had a couple of people that you knew within Nationwide that were interested in just coming and helping us out, and in return they were getting all these amazing experiences of coming from a massive organization like Nationwide, where they're very siloed, to being in VANHEROES, which is having to wear about 50 different hats and all trying to get things done in a very short amount of time with that agile mindset. But that was in line with that helping communities, because it was bigger than just vans and drivers. And you touched on how it shaped our why as founders. And I guess our why and the Van Heroes why are kind of one and the same, because the business was us. Because we were the founders, our personal mission sort of was echoed by the business. And I think when you find the why, that is what you're doing. You're deeply humanizing what you're trying to do with your business, especially if you're starting something yourself. You're, by finding that why, you're tethering yourself to that business and saying, like, what am I trying to achieve through this business? And by doing that, you allow the business to become bigger than you. So yeah.
Sorry, lag when we're talking on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, always going to overlap. No, I think you're right. And, you know, I look back at Van Heroes, and that why was echoed all the way through to the end for us. And, you know, I absolutely adore the why that we created in there. And as you say, it speaks very much from the heart of us, and what we're passionate about now. And when I look at the successes, and we had multiple successes with Van Heroes, right? You know, from being the best tech startup in the Wiltshire and Techies, all the way through to the entrepreneurship program that we created. The why of helping people was echoed through our love of watching the people that came from Nationwide into the organization of Van Heroes and watching them grow as people. I look at people like Leah and Ryan and Rachel and James and all these guys that came through and experienced life of Van Heroes, and watch their mindsets change, watch their mannerisms change, watch how they evolved as people. And I get the benefit of watching them both at Nationwide and at Van Heroes. And that journey that those guys went on because of our why is what keeps me passionate about our partnership and what we can bring to the table.
Yeah, and absolutely. And there's two other things I want to add to that point. And the first one is, when you have if there are two of you or more of you working on a project and you have that why that you can all agree on, it brings you together and kind of unifies you. So even if your personal sort of why and reasons for doing things are slightly different, if you can establish the why when you're at that company or when you're sitting down in those board meetings, if you've got a purpose you can all agree on, it just unifies you and again acts as that sort of spirit level. So even though you, Shane, had your own sort of whys and personal goals between Nationwide, Van Heroes, and other things, and I had my own, when it came to working together on Van Heroes, we just knew exactly what to do. The other thing is that it means last episode we talked about how it's okay to fail. And I think that one of the reasons we have such a good attitude towards failure is because we're very comfortable with our why. And ultimately, because we had such a strong why with Van Heroes, it meant that when things happened, like, for example, closing down the business and deciding to call it quits in December after over 3 years, we were able to use our why as a spirit level and go, well, that's not really a failure, because we were true to the why until the end. And the reason that we stopped doing Van Heroes is because we could no longer fulfill our why that way. We couldn't connect communities and help people through doing vans, and the only way we could keep doing the van thing was if our why started changing, and that wasn't good enough. So it actually made more sense for us to keep the why and change the how and change the what. And that's basically the reason why we are now doing this entrepreneurship program. The why is pretty much the same. It's about helping people, helping communities, but the how and the what is slightly different. It's building on our experience from Van Heroes, but it's more about that entrepreneurship piece. And it's more about working with local businesses, working with local startups, and helping accelerate people's careers in the process.
Yeah, exactly. And it was such a natural transition for us that we didn't, it wasn't like we were starting from scratch again. It was, okay, we're halfway there already. Like we understand our why. You know, it's the same thing with Apple, right? You know, like they don't have to start from scratch every time. They've got a following. People understand what they're doing, and I think that's the same for us. We can be really genuine with what our why is and why we're doing things, when we go to organizations and we approach them about the entrepreneurship program, people understand it straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it gives us more confidence because we know we can do the things we say we're going to do. When it comes to the how and the what, we know we can do that. Yeah. When it was VANHEROES, we didn't have any experience with logistics and vans. So even though that's where the idea came from, we got to a point where we were like, we know clearly how we want to do this, but I feel like we're lacking this experience and this expertise. Whereas now we've replaced that. We replaced that with something that we know we can do really well, but the why is still the same. And that gives us much more confidence that we can achieve that we can follow that why for a lot longer. We can do what companies like Apple do, where they diversify and they are able to add more things, add more pieces to the puzzle as they grow. It gives us a lot more confidence to do that.
Now, we spoke a lot about kind of business-wise, right? But I'd love to touch on personal-wise as well, because this is something that a lot of people don't think about. Everything that they relate to with the why is around business, but actually there's a lot of personal whys that you can do, and the personal whys can change throughout your life. Your personal why at the age of 16 is very different to that of one of 25 to that of one of 35, etc. Right? It changes, but I think it's really important to understand your personal why as well. So should we cover that for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. This is something that I was thinking about quite a lot, because I think this is especially true if you're trying to kind of find your way with work or with a career or with education. I think that there's so many options out there, and there's not always a lot of advice and facts about what is out there to do. I was thinking about this. I was trying to understand, like, what is my why? Like, what is my purpose? Because I've had different roles and different jobs in the past. And I try and think those times where I wasn't feeling fulfilled, what was missing? What didn't I have? And those times where I was feeling fulfilled, what was the common denominator? Because not all of those times were exactly the same. Not all of those interests I had were exactly the same. So you said about how your why changes as you grow older. I feel like my why, I was trying to answer the question, what if my why has always been the same, but just the what and the how is the thing that's been changing? Because that's what I'm experimenting with different things. So, because I was trying to think, I used to love art and drawing when I was younger, and then I really loved music, and then it kind of went to design and graphic design, and now it's more like marketing and business and strategy. And I'm kind of thinking, what is the tether between those things? And I thought, well, maybe my why is something like making good ideas a reality. It could be as simple as that. It's something that is never going to be fulfilled, in that I can't make all the good ideas reality, but I can have a go at doing as many as possible. But that would explain a lot. That would explain why I have an affinity to anything with a creative process. And that would also explain why I have a love for things like games and films and anything that's required a creative process to put it together. Anything that started off as an idea that someone had and it became something. And I'm also fascinated with stories of things that nearly didn't happen. Like there was something about Star Wars. Is that George Lucas? He managed to get this executive from Fox on before he made Star Wars, and he showed him the script. And the guy sort of looked at the script and was like, "I have no idea what the script is about." Talking about dogs flying spaceships and all this stuff. And he was like, "But you seem like a talented guy. You can, I'll give you the money to make the film." And you're just thinking, like, imagine if that just didn't happen. So I get fascinated with anything like that. So yeah, I don't know, maybe my why is something like that. But as I've got older, my how and my what, the way I kind of explore that why has changed.
That's interesting. And maybe for me then, maybe it's not about my why changing. Maybe it's just about the how and the what, as you say, and that I'm still yet to find my personal why. I've not spent the time looking at a personal why for me yet, but I see my life changing and I see things changing around me all the time. So the how and the what has changed, but I'm yet to find my personal why. That's something I need to have a look at, and that will help me shape my future as well, and and that of my family. But I think it's a really important one for people to think about as well, because it's not just for business, this why concept. There's so much more to it that can really help you understand what you're doing, right? It's not just about going to work. If you're just going to work for a paycheck, then your life isn't fulfilling. Like my personal journey with work has changed dramatically throughout my career, starting off from sales to marketing and kind of moving through to operations, now business design. But the thing that I'm passionate about, that I've always been passionate about, I guess, and maybe this is my why, is about being a people servant. It's not. It's not about. And you know what? I'll explore this concept offline and spend some time for myself doing this. But I think the people servant thing is what it is potentially my why. I'm here to support my family. I'm here to support my friends. I'm always here to support all my line reports at work. I'm here to support non-line reports. I see myself as a people servant, not a people pleaser. Yeah. I'm not here to please people. They're two very different things. Mm-hmm. People servant. I'm here to help them achieve their whys, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's finding your why is about finding what gives you fulfillment, like what allows you to go to bed at the end of the day feeling like that was a good day, that was a successful day. And for some people it will be about helping others. For some people it will be about solving problems. I think I can't imagine there's a lot of core whys, but I think that the way that you fulfill that why, the what and the how, there's infinite possibilities there. That's where the richness is. But if you don't have that why to guide you, it can just feel overwhelming. It can feel like there's a million jobs out there that I don't know which one is right for me. And I just think, imagine if someone explained this concept to me when I was at school, thinking about a career, or at any point in my life.
Well, this just brings you back to the golden circle that we touched on earlier as well. Like you talk about the infinite possibilities as you go around. That's because that's the biggest circle. If you look at it and you go, okay, well, actually, the why is this small piece, and then the other pieces orbit around it. Essentially, that's why that grows. The what and the how can grow to various different pieces, but the why stays the same in the center.
Yeah, and I would urge. So yeah, I would urge everybody to have a go at trying to find your why, like your personal why. So get a piece of paper and draw the golden circle. So draw a big circle and then draw a smaller circle in that, and then draw one more small circle in the middle. Your middle circle is your why. The one in the center is the why. The middle one is the how, and the outside one is the what. So you might only be able to just put in like the what you do. So that might be your job. That might be, like what you have. Like I'm a homeowner. I work in this company, or this is my profession. And then you might think about like your how, like that might be like your attitude to things. That might be, you might be a positive person. You might always be like, you might be quite adventurous. You can start exploring those traits and characteristics. And if you're not sure, ask your friends, ask other people, because sometimes people that know you, it's a lot easier for them to give you that insight. So if you're putting together this picture of your sort of this one how, you might then encounter this thing where you kind of have to ask yourself, like, am I fulfilled in what I'm doing? Am I fulfilled in my job? Or maybe you are now, but there are times in your life when you weren't fulfilled. and then try and do what I did and think about what was missing when you weren't feeling fulfilled. What do you, if you're not feeling fulfilled right now, what is it that you want? What is it that you feel like you're missing? Was there a time when you were feeling really fulfilled and you don't have that thing anymore? Those are the things that will help you piece together your why. And a lot of the time it'll be a very deeply emotional thing. It'll be, like Shane said, about helping people, or about solving things, or we're not here to tell you what your why is. That's for you to figure out, and it's also for you to evaluate, constantly evaluate, come to a conclusion, write something down, and once you have that why, then follow Simon Sinek's advice and start with that why and emanate out from there. So if your why is to help others, then you'll very quickly, as you work out, you'll quickly identify what in the rest of that golden circle is not really in line with that why. You might have a job where you don't interact with people at all, and you go, oh, well, that's why I'm not feeling so fulfilled, because I'm not having the opportunity to really fulfill that why and help people.
It brings you into focus, doesn't it? Just reevaluate that, revisit it. Your why can stay the same, your what and your how can change, but find that why and then build around it. That you can then find the what and the how around those, what fits with your why, what you want to focus on, what you want to concentrate. And I promise you, it will help you in your life. And I think, there's a really kind of good ending to this is, go find the TED Talks, read the book if you can, or get it on Audible, and then put those principles into practice for yourself. Find your why and then build around it with your how and your what.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, if any of our listeners want to talk to us about this subject, or even, ask some opinions, or show us a golden circle that they've drawn, please do get in touch. You can find us both on LinkedIn, Hamlyn Deas and Shane Moore, and we'll post some links as well, so you can find us and get in touch with us.
Thanks everyone for tuning in for another episode, and we look forward to the next one.
Thanks guys, see you soon.
Cheers.